Hi, I'm here with Stephanie today, and she graduated from the BSPS program in 2015. She's recently earned her Ph.D. She's currently working at the National Cancer Institute, focusing on improving patient outcomes in rare forms of lung cancer. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm really excited. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your career at the moment and how you got there?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be able to give back to the program in some way. Without the B.S.P.S program and the undergrad research I did there, I would not be where I am today. So I'm super thankful for that. So after I graduated URI in 2015, I entered graduate school at the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Pharmacy under the dual mentorship of Doctors Maureen Kane and Peter Swan. I recently finished my PhD in April of this year, and since then I have begun work in Dr. David Schrump's lab in the National Cancer Institutes of the NIH. So Dr. Schrump is the chair of the thoracic surgery branch of the Center for Cancer Research. So his lab focuses on understanding and using epigenetic therapies to treat thoracic cancers, especially lung cancers. I'm involved in a few different aspects of the lab's research, like management of clinical research samples, samples from clinical trials, management of mouse and cell lines, and starting up my own project soon involving epigenetic agents in mouse models of lung cancer.
Oh, that sounds really interesting and really similar to, I know, the lab you were involved in as an undergraduate student. But one thing that I just picked up on there is that you mentioned that the clinical trials aspect. So how did you get involved in that? Because I know that we have a lot of opportunities here in terms of research, but the clinical trials is an area that maybe I know I'm not as familiar with, but I'm quite interested in. So could you just give me a little insight into how you got involved in the clinical trials aspect?
So it's not something that I had ever been involved in clinical trials before in terms of undergrad research or graduate research. I actually shied away from it because patient-on-patient contact isn't something that I personally was interested in. However, the NIH is first and foremost, especially the NCI, is a research hospital. So a lot of it is involved in tailoring patient care. And so that, of course, means taking things directly from patients. So that's one aspect of it where we're looking at treating patients who are actually just here to treat their diseases. And then the clinical trials, we are always looking for improving patient care. And since we have such a wide variety and base of patients, we can, and since we have so many tools available to us in terms of tailoring their care, whether it be genetic or their past, their specific subset of a disease, we can better fit them to clinical trials that we may be interested. So it's really to speak for the resources that are available here. It's not something that I was looking into, but it is very interesting because now I'm not working on the face-to-face patient side of things. It's more just handling those samples and looking at those in kind of a blinded way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about the undergraduate research you were involved in here at URI and how you got started in that lab.
At some point, I just emailed Dr. King, who was the program coordinator. I don't know if she still is.
Yeah.
And so Dr. King just told me she kind of had an idea of which professors were looking or receptive to having a student, and she sent me to Dr. Deng. And luckily for me, he was very receptive to having an undergraduate student in his lab. So I just met with him and talked about what kind of things I was interested in science and if I'd be a good fit for the lab and things like that.
Yeah, that's a similar experience to me. It's that reaching out to the professor, and then they will normally have a chat with you to see whether you're going to be a good fit for their lab. But really, it can be quite intimidating as an undergraduate student, but actually all the professors are quite receptive and they're happy to have undergraduate students in their lab. Yeah, when you were in Dr. Deng's lab, what projects specifically were you involved in? Can you tell us a bit about that?
So at the time, again, I'm not sure where his research is now. Dr. Deng's lab used a lot of molecular and cellular biology techniques. So I was able to learn a lot of the quintessential basic science techniques used in a lot of biology labs, such as Western blotting. I worked a lot with purification of protein, RNA, and DNA, and then analyzing those. cell culture, and then in vivo experiments and rodent handling, most of which I was able to do independently by the time I graduated. I was also exposed to other types of experiments through collaborations with other labs, such as mass spectrometry, working with Dr. Akhlagi's lab.
Yeah, it sounds like we are in a similar position, because the reason I joined Dr. Deng's lab was to get to experience some of those techniques and to learn them. So yeah, we're still doing animal studies with mice. So if you want to learn specific techniques, because we have so many labs available, you can find a lab that will be practicing those techniques, which is important for me, I think, as I'm trying to prepare myself for graduate school. I'm trying to learn as many techniques as I can related to what I want to do. So you can go about finding a lab in two ways. You can look for a research topic that you're really interested in, or specific skills that you want to learn, or if you just really connect with the professor, you can go about it that way too. For me, it's kind of best of both worlds, because I'm interested in cancer research and those molecular biology techniques. So there's a lot of options available to our undergraduate students.
Right. I would also add that URI is really great in that, or especially the College of Pharmacy. I guess I can't speak for anybody else, but the College of Pharmacy is a very collaborative environment. So even if you are in a lab, for example, I was pretty committed to Dr. Deng's lab, but for example, if you wanted to learn another technique that maybe his lab is not experienced in, you could go next door, down the hall, or up a floor and talk to another professor or one of their graduate students or one of their postdocs. And they are always very receptive to teaching you something new or helping you learn or understand something. So that was really helpful as well.
Absolutely, yeah, it's definitely a collaborative environment, and all the professors are happy to help you out wherever you can. They're really there for you, and they understand that, so they'll definitely try and help you if it's possible. Mm-hmm. How would you say that your experience in the BSPS program has helped you in your career?
So working as an undergraduate researcher has had a tremendous benefit in my career. So firstly, I had no idea what I was going to do after I graduated when I first started this research opportunity in Dr. Deng's lab. But after a few months working at the bench in the lab, I fell in love with science, with the research process, and I knew that this was what I wanted to do. So this opportunity and Dr. Deng specifically were an incredible boon to my career. He mentored all of his students, even undergraduates and interns, to push themselves to understand all the basic science behind each protocol and each process. So not only was I able to learn important techniques and hard lab skills, but I was also taught to think critically about science, which I would personally say is the mark of a good scientist. And it's something that I was fortunate enough to learn early on in my career, whereas others tend not to learn it until their Ph.D. or later in their postdoc. The opportunity also allowed me in a more tangible way to co-author several papers by the time I graduated, which meant that I had more options moving forward in terms of graduate schools or if I were interested in other opportunities.
Definitely. I can definitely relate to the bit that you said about finding out that this is really what you want to do from an early age, because in your freshman year, you're enrolled in this degree, but you've actually probably never had any lab experience. Right. And then when you start to get that lab experience, and really, I find being in the lab amazing and I thoroughly enjoy it. And that's how I know, okay, I am doing the right degree, I am in the right career path. And without that experience, you might not necessarily know that, like you said, until you're well into your career and like you've committed a lot of time and probably money to it already. So it's a really amazing opportunity in that sense to just confirm that this is what you want to do. And I know some people have had the opposite experience and said they didn't enjoy being in the lab, but they were able to pivot within the pharmaceutical science degree and still find a track that they really enjoyed. So without that, those people wouldn't be able to find their perfect careers either. So it really is invaluable in that sense.
I absolutely agree. And I think, again, people get to graduate school and they get halfway through and they find they're miserable because they're at the bench every day. And they just went there because they thought, oh, that's what I should do next. And that's not the case. I think really you should always use, especially college and undergrad, explore everything and find out most importantly, what you enjoy and what drives you, because you don't want to spend the rest of your life doing something you just thought you should do to make money or have a good career, have a good status or whatever. That's not actually going to drive you day in and day out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finally, then, what advice would you give to BSPS students, maybe who are freshmen or sophomores right now, regarding the opportunities that are available to them in the College of Pharmacy?
So this goes along with what we were just talking about, but I would not suggest, I'm not going to tell you to immerse yourself in every single opportunity that URI or the BSPS program has to offer you, because that didn't work for me. And it made me feel in some cases like I had failed or I had made a mistake in my major and my career choice. Instead, I would urge you to take an honest look at yourself and consider what you're good at, what you actually enjoy about science or otherwise. Look for what piques your interest and pursue these things instead of what you think you should do or what will make you successful. Because now is the time to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life, what makes you happy, what drives you, and what makes you feel fulfilled. So overall, my advice, both in this program and in life, is to try anything that catches your eye and then stick with what fulfills you, what makes you happy, and then pursue that with all the enthusiasm that it inspires.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate your time.